The Beresheet Moonlander was a spacecraft that came to within a few hundred feet of carrying out the third soft landing on the Moon this century, when it sadly and mysteriously broke down. Its instruments and communications suddenly failed, and by the time they were restarted, the craft could not be stopped, crashing onto the lunar surface. Unmanned missions to the Moon are far less reliable than manned missions. The lunar excursions of all 6 Apollo landings thankfully went without any major hitch. Beresheet, named after the first line in the Torah, translated in the Book of Genesis as "in the beginning," was the first ever moon mission to originate from a unique public-private partnership that evolved out of the Google X Prize and was based in Israel. It was designed as a very simple mission. The lander was intended to carry out a few basic actions for just a few hours. However, some people on the project added a few frills. For instance, it had on board a time capsule with items of Jewish and Israeli culture and history. It had an Israeli flag on it and the words of the Declaration of the Establishment of the State of Israel. However, at the last minute, somebody decided to add to the capsule some human DNA samples and a collection of tardigrades. Taking non-human living creatures into space is not new. In fact, the first Earth being to enter Earth orbit was a dog called Laika on Sputnik 2 in 1957. In 2019, the Changi lander took seeds to the Moon to try and grow them in an experiment. Tardigrades, often called water bears, are very small and sometimes mistaken for insects when they are in fact their own phylum. A phylum is a basic category of animals that incorporates many classes, such as vertebrates, which includes mammals, reptiles and fish and so on, or arthropods, which includes insects, scorpions and spiders and so on. Tardigrades are famous for being one of the hardiest animals on Earth. They can survive extremes of heat, cold, dryness and radiation that no other animal can. They are therefore very common and have been found all over the planet, from deserts to ice caps to the depths of the oceans. They are very ancient and predate the dinosaurs by almost 400 million years, and at the risk of sounding morbid, they will definitely be on the scene long after humans have bowed out. There are some creatures found on Earth that are so strange that although they are not extraterrestrial, they might as well be. Most interestingly, tardigrades can endure a vacuum and have persisted in deep space for up to 10 days. This leads to the disturbing question: when Beresheet crashed, what happened to its tardigrade passengers? The time capsule may well have broken apart by the impact, and thousands of tardigrades would have then been scattered onto the Moon's surface, where they would have crawled around like a swarm of ants. Israel Aerospace Industries has already started work on a Beresheet 2 mission, which will hopefully be more successful than the first one. No doubt some joker in mission control will nickname it after the beginning. Will it have time to check on the tardigrades? It is likely that they lived for a considerable amount of time, because whenever tardigrades finally hit the ceiling of their endurance abilities, they allow themselves to dry up and enter a dormant state, similar to hibernation. They can survive in this existence of suspended animation for an indefinite period of time, although it has been measured in laboratory conditions as 10 years maximum. When the conditions become more favorable, the tardigrades then wake up and continue as normal. Therefore, it might be possible one day to revive the little water bears if a future moon mission can locate them. The worst-case scenario is a few of them might mutate as a result of the radiation and then evolve into something else entirely. This could be very hazardous for future lunar explorers if the new life forms are hostile. There is an animation called Beans, which is a mock television advertisement for baked beans in which a number of astronauts on the Moon are attacked by a monstrous creature that nobody knew lived there. The film is of course a comedy, and such extreme examples would be highly unlikely in real life. It would be more realistic to wonder if we might see the emergence of some kind of toxic parasite. There's nothing fundamentally impossible about biology existing in a vacuum. Some UFO sightings could be categorized more as possible living creatures themselves, not just inorganic vehicles for living creatures. The phenomenon of space critters has always been interesting. as reported by several astronauts such as Story Musgrave. These may be strange natural organisms that can move through the void of space like a spacecraft. They may have evolved on one of the planets, but have developed to the point where they can fly in space, in the same way land animals evolved into birds and bats so they could take to the air. Space critters may even have originated on Earth. The work of the ufologist Nick Hayes also indicates that he is attracting living beings, not just artificial objects, to his home in Oxfordshire using a cloudbuster, a device invented by the psychologist Wilhelm Reich to channel a newly discovered type of energy called orgone. Professor Chandra Wickramasinghe is an astronomer from Sri Lanka who has assisted one of the greatest minds in the history of physics, Sir Fred Hoyle. He came up with the notion of panspermia, literally seeds everywhere, which states that outer space is not a dead, cold, empty void, but is in fact packed with life and life-giving material. Interstellar matter is often called dust because most astronomers consider it to be inorganic particles. But what if it is alive? There is intriguing but also worrying evidence in the form of pandemic diseases. In 1918, there was a global epidemic of Spanish flu that killed millions of people. It was blamed on the H1N1 influenza virus that was carried across the world very quickly by soldiers returning from the Great War. However, this illness did not spread the way illnesses normally do, one person infecting another who then goes on to infect another and so on, so that the malady spreads slowly over a geographical area as people move and pass on the germ to each other. Despite its name, there is no evidence that Spanish flu came from Spain. It struck randomly at various places around the Earth at the same time. A person could catch the virus without ever coming into contact with an infected person. It was just as if it fell from the sky. By a strange coincidence, a comet was passing at the time and its tail crossed the orbit of the Earth. Could the influenza virus have come from it? There is a strange meteorological phenomenon called blood rain, in which rainwater turns red like blood. It has been recorded throughout history and may well have inspired the Bible story about the river Nile turning to blood. This is thought to be caused by airborne microalgae. However, after a particular gory downpour in Kerala, India, the Indian professor and his colleagues proposed that the red-colored agent in the rainwater had an extraterrestrial origin. Like with the 1918 influenza pandemic, a comet was passing at the time and a fragment of it impacted the Earth's atmosphere over the area of Kerala just before the red rain fell. The red agent looked like biological cells under a microscope, but they had many differences to cells normally found on Earth. However, they were extremely robust and could endure temperatures above 300 degrees Celsius. Indeed, they thrived best at temperatures above that which most terrestrial organisms could stand. At the same time, the cells were able to metabolize various chemicals in the same way life forms consume food and drink. If the red rain of Kerala really did come from outer space, then maybe our Earth creatures did too, like the tardigrades. Maybe biologists could solve some of the mysteries of life by taking on board the hypothesis that life on Earth is not an isolated bubble separate from any other life that might or might not exist in space on some planet. Maybe it is just the local deposit of the living medium of space itself. We know that wherever life emerges, it clings on permanently. It evolves and adapts to suit its habitat in an almost infinite array of forms. Therefore, we should expect to find it everywhere. Scientists should not be surprised when they land on an alien planet and find organisms living there. They should instead be surprised if they land on a planet and do not. It's looking increasingly likely that Earth is not this tiny blue-green speck in blackness, a minute oasis of life in an infinite cosmic desert. It really is just one polyp in a universal coral reef, a lush pond in a celestial rainforest billions of light years across.